Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
Have you checked the children?
I want to play a game. The box. You opened it. We came.
Here. This is the All-American Spookshow.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the All-American Spook Show podcast. I'm Josh. I'm joined here with Donny.
Hey.
And the Professor Smoak.
What's up?
And Will couldn't be with us. He's on assignment. But we are welcoming Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide, Volume 1 and now Volume 2 to the show. Now, we had you on back in, I guess it was probably January or so. It was early this year. Of course, since then, we started our Canon Fodder series, and you appear every time we do one of those with your, now we call it the Canon Chronicles segment. Thanks for coming.
No, thanks for having me. And thanks for inviting me to record those intros for you. I have fun with those.
Yeah.
It's always fun to go deep into one specific movie, and something like Hot Chili, I never expected anybody to talk to me about.
Now we kind of have to blame you for that one.
I'm surprised you spoke to me again after doing Hot Chili.
Well, would it have been any different if we had watched, what was the other one, Hot Resort? Probably not, right?
Hot Resort.
No. Neither's a great movie, but Hot Chili, I think, at least has a more interesting story behind it. Hot Resort doesn't have as much excuse for being the way it is.
That's not a ringing endorsement. Yeah, like when you said, like, well, there were no summer camp movies that you knew of, that Canon Films had done. So we're like, all right, well, we're not going to look any further. So these are the closest ones. So I think we just kind of took a round table, like, pulling straws kind of thing, and just landed on that.
I think
one.
we watched the trailers to both of them, right? And then just kind of like, let's go with Hot Chili.
They basically look like the same movie in different locations. So fuck it, Hot Chili it is.
Pretty much.
Neither of those movies any of us had ever seen. Those definitely, being a huge Canon film fans going back into the day and stuff, I'd never even heard of either of those.
No.
So that was just interesting seeing it in that context. Never even hearing of it before.
Yeah, those are ones I wouldn't have seen back in the day either. Those two came to me after starting on this project. I think I told you guys last time we spoke, but my video store had no problems with renting ninja movies or horror movies. If it was R-rated for like violence or gore, that was okay. But if you were underage and there was like a woman in a bikini in it, it was you couldn't get that out without like someone old enough renting it. So just a very weird sort of role that, at least in my experience, and out in the middle of nowhere in Ohio, that was how the video store seemed to work.
Same here where I'm at in South Carolina too.
But before we get into the heart of the matter and talking about your latest book and everything, when we did the Missing in Action episode, the only thing you didn't give us when you talked about that one was your Cannonball rating. So somehow you left that out. You got so keyed up on all the details that you left your rating out. So what are you, on 0 to 5 Cannonball rating scale, what are you going to give Missing in Action?
Oh boy, I think it's one of the better Chuck Cannon movies, but it's not in the same tier. Invasion USA would be where I'd put the top tier of his Cannon collaborations. So I guess 4. I would say 4 for that one.
I don't remember right offhand what we gave it, but it was 4 to 5. I think almost all of us, we were in that 4 to 5 range for that one. So yeah, not far off.
Yeah, it's only because I know how crazy they can get, and it just doesn't get to that same level as Invasion USA.
True. And a lot of the other Canon catalog, right, just gets even nuttier.
Oh yeah. That one's Missing in Action is surprisingly straightforward for a lot of Canon materials, Canon movies.
I actually checked out your IMDb, some time ago. You've written some screenplays, acted, directed, produced, and all that. But do you see yourself kind of returning to that side of the industry?
Oh boy, it's tough. That's nothing that I'm really I'm eager to go back to or do again. I had made a movie that, so as writing and directing it, the end results were disappointing. And that's, I guess, the only way to describe it. And it was something that, despite everyone's best efforts, you get these great stories of people all banding together to make this independent film, and everybody having the best interests in mind, all having a good time, really putting a lot of love into it, and still sort of coming out as a train wreck. It gave me a lot of, at least I think I can empathize with talking to some of these canon directors and things I've done since, where something in a movie can go wrong. It's also there are people that I think are much better equipped for that sort of job. I'm not somebody who loves managing a lot of people, and why I thought I would be a good person to direct a movie. That was, I don't know where I would have thought that, but it's something I enjoy, and I enjoy having that experience, and I think it definitely helps me understand how, especially writing about these sort of movies and researching them, how a very tight budget, a very tight shooting schedule, you have to be the right type of people, and there's so many people that can make movies on.
Yeah, plus it gives you kind of a different perspective. Like you mentioned, you kind of empathize with these directors, but also from also you mentioned you kind of have a pet project, and you pour everything into it, and then it kind of gets shit on or whatever, or it doesn't turn out the way you want it to. It's demoralizing in a sense.
It is. But again, it's an experience I wouldn't have traded for anything. And
definitely.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it at the time.
and it does give you a deeper appreciation, like you said, for the other side of the coin, and just for, being someone that, does what you do, writing about movies and interviewing people, and a little bit of everything that you do, and the things that we do here on the show too, talking about the movies and interviewing different people and stuff like that. So it does give you a different perspective when you've been in that position, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It has definitely shaped the way I look at movies, especially when it's something like a canon film where often things go wrong and often things don't go as planned. And yeah, I think that in that way has helped me a lot in what I'm doing now. Speaking of what you're doing now, so Volume 2 came out, what was that, like May, something like that, I think, when it officially came out? Yeah. Of the Canon Film Guide? Yeah, it was almost a surprise release. I didn't really do a lot of making any announcements ahead of time or anything like that. There are the first book I had announced like 3 months out, and then it's like in February of like 2020 or something, and then COVID hit, and I just watched paper shortages happen, like nobody being able to go out and do anything. Everything got super weird. Shipping going super weird. So it's one of those things that when the book was ready, my publisher asked me, he's like, "When do you want to put this out? You can do it now if you want." And I was like, if it's ready, let's do it. Like, yeah. I can know right now, at least, like I can have good faith that the next couple days are not going to, like, the world's not going to get turned upside down again, like it did with the first one. Now, this one only covers from the years 1985 to 1987. Why just the 2 years? Well, this is really peak canon, at least of the Golden Globus period. This covers a lot of probably their most famous movies, I would say. I think it's fair to say. It is their most ambitious period, both in terms of how many movies they're making, how many movies they're announcing, but also how big these movies are. This is when you have Masters of the Universe, the American Ninja movies, Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone, Superman 4, King Solomon's Mines, the 2 Alan Quartermain movies. All 3 Tobe Hooper movies came out during this period, with Life Force, Texas 2, and Invaders from Mars, Runaway Train. It's just, the list goes on and on and on. And if you were going to make a list of probably people's favorite canon movies, even Invasion USA, the Delta Force, the Big Chuck movies, the ones that people most associate with canon came out during this period. And it is only those years, 85 to 87, but it's significantly larger than the first book, which covers a longer period of time, 80 to 84. just because of how much they were putting out. This was a time that Cannon, thanks to a hit like Missing in Action, they had Missing in Action and Breakin' both sort of land back to back, and those were two of the most successful movies they had in their entire run. And so this led to them heading into 85, 86 with not only the distributors and theater chains and things taking them seriously, but people within Hollywood, other like filmmakers, actors, big name stars. So they could actually kind of punch above their weight class a bit. Most famous, I think, the biggest example of what Cannon was like during these years, in May of 1986 at the Cannes Film Festival, they took out a 60-page spread of ads in the trade magazines, Hollywood Reporter and Variety, and this was announcing their slate for the next 12 months. That's 60 movies. That's, doing the math, that's more than a movie a week. You shake things out, I'm sure there were weekends where had they hit that mark, they would have been competing with themselves three movies at the box office at a time, which is wild. And this is a time too, like if a big studio, one of the major studios, your Foxes, your Columbias, things like that, your Warner Brothers, if you had 7 movies out in a year, that was an incredibly busy slate. And if Cannon only hit half of their mark, if they had 30 movies out, that's just an insane amount of production. And this is a time where they are producing movies, a movie like Life Force at the same time as Invasion USA with Chuck Norris, at the same time as American Ninja, at the same time as Runaway Train, which got Oscar nominations, and a Robert Altman film. It's such a weird eclectic mix of movies and genres and styles and budgets, and they're just hammering them all out at the same time.
And hot chili.
Yeah.
I'm sure the longest chapter of your book is just devoted to hot chili, right?
I actually lumped Hot Chili and Hot Resort together because I found that writing about them both, there was so much overlap that they didn't deserve their own chapters. I only do that for franchises, and I unofficially lump those together as a franchise, even though that I think there was like 2 weeks released apart on video or something crazy like that.
Yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and dub it the Hot Shit franchise.
Yeah, both of those movies lifted a lot from the Cannon's Lemon Popsicle series, which was a series of basically teen sex comedies that started in the late 70s, and they just pumped them out one after another. And in Israel, but those never hit here. They remade the first one as The Last American Virgin. A lot of the best gags from the second, third, fourth Lemon Popsicle movies all were reused in Hot Resort and Hot Chili.
Ugh.
So if you think those two movies are similar, after you've also seen like Lemon Popsicle 3, you're like, I can't tell these three films apart.
Kind of a shift, because I noticed I think you had put it on Twitter that you recently, like toward the end of August, you visited the Mahoning Drive-In up in Pennsylvania. How was that? Like what was going down that weekend, and how was that?
That place is, I mean, for if you're any sort of genre movie fan, it is worth the pilgrimage. If you're within any sort of drivable distance, even as far, it's about 5 hours for me, and that was my second time out there this summer. I went just the first time just as a fan to go see Night of the Comet and The Apple in June.
Good Lord.
Oh, it was a heck of a night. And
you're truly a fan if you're driving 5 hours to go see The Apple, man.
Well, it's I mean, you can stay there overnight. So I drove out there, got there like right as Night of the Comet was starting, watched both movies, passed out in my car about 2:30 in the morning, woke up at 7 and drove home. So I was home for lunch with the kids, but it's a magical place. It's such a cool vibe. They do such incredible themed weekends and themed nights. And it's all on 35 millimeter.
I was about to say, it's one of, if not the last, like drive-in that still plays 35 millimeter films, right? Or specifically just 35 millimeter, right?
Yeah, that's all they do. And they're showing movies at least 3 nights a week, if not 4 or 5, depending on their busier weeks. Like right now, I think Camp Blood just wrapped up, which is all horror slasher movies.
I'm about to say, it can't be the actual Camp Blood movies. Tell me not.
Then the first night of that is actually, I think it was Thursday night when it started, and they were showing the Mutilator with I think 4 cast members there or something like that, which was really cool. And then this weekend, which I'm sad because I was just out there 2 weekends ago. If it weren't so close, I would be out there again this weekend because they're doing, for Dario Argento's birthday, they're doing 6 Argento movies on 35 millimeter.
Oh wow!
Which would be so much fun. Yeah. But yeah, I was there for Action Fest, which they do Exhumed Films, which is Harry Guerra, who runs Exhumed, is also he does it's Garage House Pictures, I think is his DVD label. He brings all these movies. So I saw the main attraction was Friday night. It was The Warriors with several of the real life Warriors present, and then 2 more Walter Hill movies. Saturday was Commando, Ninja 3: The Domination, and Kickboxer, which just incredible triple feature. And I was there to introduce those movies and sell books. But the third night was what was the craziest is Exhumed put together a 2-hour trailer reel, 35 millimeter Canon trailers.
What? And
watching 2 hours straight of Canon trailers is, even for me, it was a lot. But it was awesome. It was wild, and it was something that there weren't a ton of people there because that's not really what gets people to drive out to the middle of Pennsylvania on a Sunday night. But the people that were there for it were really hardcore Canon fans, and I saw trailers that I didn't even think existed. Things like I've never seen a Penitentiary 3 trailer, because a theatrical trailer, because what's on YouTube is only like the little video trailer, and that's never had any sort of home video, and a few other ones that I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, because even in the day when you can find almost any trailer on YouTube, to actually see things that you've never seen before was really cool. But it was so much fun.
Where do they even find that at? Like in libraries or something?
Well, he had said he'd been collecting it because he's got Exhumed has a giant collection of 35 millimeter prints. A lot of these things they show are his personal collection, and he says he started doing this on this collection 10 years ago. So he just got it to 2 hours now. He just got it to 5 reels to show it. Wow. But what's unfortunate is he's trying to rent it out for the rest of the fall, I think, to writing the different 35 millimeter theaters around the country to try to get him to show it, because it needs to take it apart. Because the next time he does a Bronson weekend, he needs to pull all those Bronson trailers back out of there, stuff like that. Speaking of Bronson, Paul Talbot had been there earlier this summer for our mutual friend for their earlier Action Fest in June, and he had offered me a lot of great advice. Just said, bring twice as many books as you think you need, and things like that if you're selling. So he's someone I greatly admire, and I'm so incredibly grateful that he doesn't want me messaging him now and then for advice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's actually something else we were going to ask you. You and Paul both share a publisher, Bear Manor Media. How'd you get hooked up with them, and how did they help you with Volume 2?
Well, Bear Manor I actually sought out because of Paul's books. I had written most of what was the first volume, and then when I went to look into publishers, I just looked at my own bookshelf and I'm looking at the spines, and okay, like there are like, I have these several books that I love, and especially the Bronson's loose books. And so I thought, okay, well, if they're interested in a book of Bronson movies that aren't the Death Wish films, aren't his westerns, they might be interested in canon. Bear Manor's a small publisher. It's run by Ben and Art, who is a guy who loves movies, loves pop culture, has great, like, very fun. We love a lot of the same things. Yeah, he's a lot of fun to work with. Very enthusiastic. Which one year working on a niche project, like my books are, it's very encouraging to have. Yeah, as far as help, I needed help putting the books together, editing the books, actually turning them into something more than just the documents on my desktop into something. And I admire people who can self-publish. It's a lot of work, and he's somebody who has an audience. Bear Manor has an audience for these sort of books, and they know people that they can, editors, things like that, designers who can really make it look awesome. And they've got so much fun stuff coming out all the time. I recently just got From Vietnam to Van Damme, which is a book about Sheldon Lettich, who wrote Bloodsport and a lot of other Van Damme projects. But his biography, just how he went from fighting in Vietnam to working on writing Bloodsport for Golden Globus and writing a Rambo sequel and things like that.
It's intermission time. Time to pause and refresh at the snack bar. During this short break, you can treat your taste to good food and sparkling cold beverages, including delicious Coca-Cola. If you're hot dog hungry, we have them. Sizzling, juicy hot dogs served in warm, oven-fresh buns. Plus a complete menu of all your favorites. Visit the refreshment center now. Enjoy delicious food and ice-cold Coca-Cola.
Going back to Volume 2, which is out now, what were your favorite movies from that specific time period that you did for the book? Like, what was maybe your favorite interviews, like your favorite, for lack of a better way of phrasing, your favorite chapters?
There are a few. One that's, I'm doing the American Ninja chapter was a lot of fun. That one I got a lot of interviews for and got to check off some bucket list interviews. Like Michael Dudikoff is one that I didn't think I would be able to get him, and I ended up connecting with him, and he's just one of the most incredibly nice people. It's something they say never, I'm trying to think of the phrase, never meet your heroes or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I think back to being, 6 or 7 years old and swinging a stick around in my backyard, pretending I'm Joe Armstrong from American Ninja movies, and then just a year ago, I'm on the phone with Michael Dudikoff, and he's asking me how my kids are, and things like that, and it's mind blowing. But that chapter was really fun to put together because I looked at all 5 movies, and I talked to a lot of people involved with different ones. Sam Furstenberg, who directed the first 2, and then Cedric Sudstrom, who directed the second 2, and a lot of talking about working in South Africa during when politically it was not a very great place to be. Mm-hmm. And so that's one personally I was looking forward to working on in this. Texas Chainsaw 2 is another chapter that I really loved putting together because that's a movie that has a crazy sort of just production story, just how quickly it came together and how slapped together everything was, really because it had to be, because Cannon had promised this movie to theaters by August 22nd, and it's March, and they don't have a script together. They don't have a cast. They don't have a plan, and it's just really Tobe Hooper and L.M. Kit Carson throwing this thing together as fast as they can and writing it as they go. It's the final shooting script for that was dated June 28th. So they were writing it as they went. They finished shooting on July 4th, the 4th of July, like at noon that day. And the movie was in theaters August 22nd. It's just the whole story of that one. And I got to talk to Bill Moseley and Bill Johnson for it. And both of them have these just sort of great war stories of working on a film that just was such a wild, wild environment. If I had to pick a chapter that surprised me how fun it was, there's a movie called Tough Guys Don't Dance. And it is written by Norman Mailer. I had always kind of written it off before I'd watched it for this book. I had never seen it before, and I'd written it off as a prestige picture, something literary, something. The trailer makes it kind of look like this hard-boiled sort of neo-noir film, and I wasn't really that interested. And when I finally saw it, I wasn't prepared for how crazy it is. It's one of those movies that, based on what you see and what little I knew about Norman Mailer, I was not expected this movie to be up there with, The Apple or Penitentiary 3 or something like that for how weird this movie is and how crazy. And it's one of my favorite Cannon movies now. It's I've watched it so many times. I've gone and visited the locations multiple times now. It gave me the opportunity to talk to Wings Hauser, who is somebody who I've always loved. And I think most people love if they like B movies or exploitation, straight to video stuff, and they from the 80s and 90s. You've definitely encountered Wings Hauser many places. It was a wild interview. He's a he's a pretty intense, interesting, funny, charming guy, and it's just a very freewheeling. If you read the interview in the book, he talks about just very casually meeting Charles Manson when he was a kid. He lived out in Los Angeles with his father, who was like a blacklisted screenwriter, and he lived next to Bob Denver from Gilligan's Island. And he talks about Bob Denver never being able to see in his house because the windows were still so filled with marijuana smoke, and he had a cheetah run in the yard. So some people have a dog on a line. He had a cheetah that just ran back and forth on a line right along their property line. He had a pet. He had a pet chimp that used to chase his sisters around at certain times of the month, and they had to like lock their house, like run into the house and lock the door. And they only had one door that locked in their house. It was the bathroom door, because it was kind of a hippie community where nothing was ever closed up, and Charles Manson sometimes came and hung out. And it's a crazy interview. If anybody reads anything in the book, like you can skip the other 980 pages and just read the 1000 review, and I think you'll be entertained enough.
That sounds awesome.
Some definitely some dream come true interviews. I don't know if you guys will remember, but there was that news story ended up being false, but the Wings Hauser death hoax like 2 years ago or something. I think it even went on like CNN or something like that, and I don't think they bothered to dispel it for like 2 years. Or not 2 years, but like 2 days. 2 days. Like there was like a good like 24 to 36 hours where I was like convinced, along with a lot of other people, that Wings Hauser had died, and I was like, oh, I'll never get the chance to talk to him, or I never had that. And then it just came out, no, I'm alive, I'm fine. I just didn't
I'm
check
right over
Twitter
here.
or
What's wrong with you? Yeah, I'm looking for. Me personally, I haven't picked up volume 2 of the book yet. I just haven't had a chance to yet. But I'm looking forward to picking it up and giving it a good read, because I really enjoyed the first one, volume 1.
Thank you.
You know, I told you before when we did that one, you did a great job on that one. So I'm sure this one's just as good, if not better. It's if nothing else, it's thicker, right? So I mean, it's like
1,000 pages. Yeah. I've got it's like 4.5 pounds or something like that.
Dang. Jeez.
It is quite a beast of a book.
Yeah, I'm not much of a reader. I actually picked up volume 1, and I'm still working through it. So.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate.
By working through it, he probably means like just reading the first page of the introduction or something like that. But
relax.
The preface.
Relax.
Yeah. Speaking of, this being, like I said, 85, 6, and 7, kind of being the peak years for canon as well. By the same token, being sort of the peak years for 3 major action stars under canon's roof at the time. Those being, of course, Charles Bronson, Chuck Norris, and Sylvester Stallone. So I know the answer to one of these questions, but what would be your favorite movie from each of those actors? At least their favorite, your favorite canon film from each of those actors. I think you said Invasion USA was.
Yeah. Invasion USA is my Chuck pick for sure. For Bronson, gosh, 10 to Midnight is my favorite non-Death Wish Bronson movie from canon, but that's not from this period. If I were to pick from this period, that's tough. I like both Murphy's Law and Assassination. I would probably go with Assassination out of those two, even though the ending really falls apart. It's a interesting movie, and once you know that Cannon literally pulled the plug on it during that time, they had run out of money. They needed just money to complete some other productions, so they just came on and they're like, "You've got this gigantic scene where you've got Jill Ireland crashing a plane into Lake Tahoe and a chase through the woods and her using martial arts on some guys, because there's a joke throughout the movie that he's protecting the president's wife and that she knows martial arts, and it never pays off because they ripped all those pages out. But I think they fight a bear or a jaguar or something like that. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And they didn't have time to film that because Cannon went and ripped those pages out because we can't afford to shoot this anymore. So those last pages went, and we get this very bad sort of ending where it's you can always pick out stuntmen that like stunt doubles for Bronson, because Bronson's got a very distinct way of like carrying himself. But this is a guy on a jet ski who doesn't even like, he's got like a Beatles wig or something on. It's not even like a Bronson, and he's supposed to be Bronson's character. And this is the finale we get for Assassination. So it's unfortunate, because I love, like, I think the movie would be a lot better regarded if it didn't have such like a wet fart of an ending. But knowing the story behind the ending, I can kind of like, okay, I'm glad it even ended. Like, knowing canon, they probably would have been happy if just, you know, you got to where the big showdown would be at the end, and they just put up a black screen with text describing what would have happened.
Or a freeze frame of Bronson, like, giving a thumbs up or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of thing that I'm... So that they got anything out of it was pretty good. So yeah, I'd have to pick out of this period, I'd have to pick Assassination, just being like a really, really fun one. And I guess technically you'd also have like the Death Wish 3 and 4 came out during this period as well. So for picking a Death Wishes, I'm a Death Wish 4 fan. I love Death Wish 3 as well, but Death Wish 4 is the one that, if I'm going to pick out any of the series to watch like right now, no matter when right now is, Death Wish 4 has John P. Ryan, who is one of the most fun actors in the canon ensemble.
And what about Stallone? I know he didn't have as many canon films. Right.
He had, 2 with the canon with Golden Globus. So he did Cobra, which canon, their credit on this is really technically a vanity credit. They had got, Stallone wanted to get Stallone to work with them. Menachem Golan wanted to make Over the Top, which everybody loves. It's everybody's favorite father-son bonding arm wrestling road adventure movie.
I believe it's because it's the only one.
Yeah. It's the only one of its kind. It is the only one of its kind for sure. Making it the best of its kind.
Yeah.
But Stallone wanted $12 million to do it. And canon doesn't have that kind of money. That is the kind of money that they would shoot 2.5 Chuck Norris movies for, like big budget. Like they could shoot an entire Chuck Norris trilogy for that, or like several ninja films.
That's probably like 11 or 12 movies for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. Even Charles Bronson was making $1.5 million per movie from them, and that was there were so many Bronson movies they couldn't make because they didn't get enough sales to justify just paying Bronson's salary. Yeah, one of the reasons why Bronson was originally supposed to be playing the Lee Marvin role in Delta Force. It was going to be Chuck Norris and Charles Bronson together, but the sales weren't enough to justify paying them both. And so they went with the cheaper actor and then got Lee Marvin to replace Bronson, just to stay within their budget.
What could have been?
Yeah, what might have been.
That's like opening up the first 2 seals in the Book of Revelation or something.
Yeah. The ads for that Canon put out with both Chuck and Charles on it had the tagline across them: "You're going to need to build bigger theaters," which it's such a canon hype way of doing things there. But going back to Stallone, they wanted to make it, but of course Canon didn't have $12 million sitting around. That's not their way of operating. They couldn't write a check for that, so they optioned. That's what Menachem Golan called it, option. They optioned Stallone, and they had 6 months. They gave him $500,000 for this exclusive deal with them. Their next movie was going to be. He had an exclusive contract with Canon. That's what Canon cared about the most, being able to put out these ads that say, like, we've signed an exclusive contract with the biggest star in Hollywood right now. And then they had to drum up the money to actually make the film. So they did it through a lot of their typical ways, going out to the film markets, selling it to Italy, Spain, Japan, pre-selling the video rights, the cable rights everywhere they could. But even that's a way you can easily drum up $10 million to make a $5 million Chuck Norris movie. But that's not how you're going to drum up, like, $10 million of pre-sales isn't even going to pay Stallone's salary, and you still need twice that to make a Stallone movie. They're looking to get $24,000. So they did other things. If you ever wonder why there's so much beautiful product placement in Over the Top, it is I will say the product placement is over the top, if you'll pardon me for saying that, but everything from like batteries to vitamins to trucks to cologne to beer to, if you're watching for it, it's very funny to see. But they finally went to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, much bigger studio, that sort of money. If they needed half the budget, I think at that point, but that's not much. That's not much for Warner Brothers. Well, it's, an entire year's worth of operating costs for Canon. They struck a deal with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers wanted to make Cobra. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to wait around until Canon was done shooting their, the silly arm wrestling movie with their star. They said, okay, you stop. You let us make Cobra first. You let him out of his exclusive contract with you for this time. We will bring you over to, we will bring him to you when he is done with Cobra, and we will pay for Over the Top. We will also give him the salary. We'll pay his check for you. So Canon got Warner Brothers to do that, but something they got to make the deal work, just because Canon had spent 2 years at that point advertising their exclusive contract with Canon, they got their name put on as like a co-producers. It was basically a vanity credit. So I love Cobra, but I will make no argument with anybody who wants to call it a Canon movie, because it's going to end up on every list of the best Canon movies. But the Canon side of it is really just like, we need you to pay Stallone's his paycheck, pay him for us so that he'll make our movie.
So in reality, Over the Top is the only real Canon movie.
So that's a very long way of me giving you the asterisk to my answer, because I would have to say Over the Top if we're going by. That's why there's a whole section in the second book where I try to explain why some movies don't get entire chapters, and you get the story that I told you just right now in the book, but in even longer, more detailed form. That I probably should have just written a chapter on Cobra in it, by all the space I dedicate to explaining why technically I didn't. I love Over the Top. I think it's a fun movie. It's one that, again, because it's a Stallone family movie, which in the Rambo era wasn't exactly the easiest thing to come by. That was one I watched a lot as a kid.
Well, I loved Volume 1. I'm sure whenever I get a chance to read Volume 2, I'm going to love that as well. I mean, I've heard good reviews. So with that being said, and to kind of bring it home, where are we at on Volume 3?
Volume 3 is going to be a little while still. I am hard at work on it. One of the things that I'm really excited about this is it's Canon's direct-to-video period. For the most part, they a lot of these movies that they made, these Master Universe, the Superman 4s, the Over the Tops, kind of bankrupted them pretty much, and they had to go. They survived with a lot of bailouts and a lot of help, but they had to go back to really shooting movies that were even cheaper than what they were doing in the beginning, when they were just shooting very cheap slashers and sex comedies and things like that. It's definitely kind of a dark period of Canon, but there's some classics in there. You get the rise of Van Damme, the discovery of Van Damme, which is of course awesome, and some more fun Dudikoff and a couple more Bronsons, Chuck Norris movies. They kept making movies with him through their final dying gas company in the mid-90s. Where I'm having a lot of fun putting together, as I mentioned earlier, Canon would take out these giant spreads, announce 60 movies, and make half of them, if that. And that was something they do all the time. Only a small percentage of the movies that they announced would actually go into production. I have something, by last count, it was around 150 movies that Canon announced that they never made. So this is where I'm having fun talking to people who worked on those projects, finding out why what if there were exact reasons other than just not having money that they fell apart, but what they would have looked like had we gotten them. There's so many great Charles Bronson movies that went unmade. A movie that I've spent my day today reading about, going through old issues of Black Belt magazine, looking for notes and things on a movie called Deathmatch, which Chuck Norris and Aaron Norris were basically trying to make what sounds a lot like Bloodsport. There was a martial arts tournament movie that was going to be for the 80s. Their whole idea was we were going to do a Enter the Dragon for the 1980s. It's interesting. It's interesting to see where this sort of came apart, because I think Van Damme happened at Cannon basically under in Chuck Norris's own home, and kind of made the movie that he had dreamed of making, and I think kind of disheartened him, Chuck Norris, a bit. But it's interesting to see where projects like that are sort of coming together. A lot of horror movies that Cannon especially announced in the early 80s, some slashers and things that just sound like a lot of fun. A movie called Lover's Lane with Wayne Newton, the Vegas singer, the crooner.
Yeah.
What? He would have played a slasher psycho killer who the ads have a picture, a silhouette of him holding a knife, and then a silhouette of two teenagers making out in a car, and stuff like that would have been fun. That was a movie that was brought to Cannon by the producers of Death Wish 2, and it was going to be directed by Emmett Alston, who did New Year's Evil for them, then did some ninja movies later on, and I would have loved to have gotten, but
yeah.
it's fun trying to piece together these I guess lost Cannon movies. What could have been.
It seems almost like you could get a whole volume 2.5 or something just out of the lost Cannon, the movies that.
Oh, we'll see what this shapes up as, because it's, my plan is to put it in the 3rd volume, but it's already a gigantic chapter.
Yeah, I've heard about what Superman 5 was supposedly a thing, right? And then Spider-Man, right? That was
Toby Hooper's Spider-Man.
Yeah. What?
Jeez.
That would have been something to see.
Yeah, we almost had Spider-Man movies by both the director of The Evil Dead and the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, I think that was something that got pointed out either by you or us. I don't remember, on the Missing in Action episode, right? That's how they slid in the Spider-Man cartoon on the TV, because they had that connection with Marvel, right?
Yeah, there's actually a great issue of Spider-Man. I couldn't tell you, but you could find it if you Google Charles Bronson Spider-Man. There's a issue from early 1985 where Charles Bronson it's clearly him, and he's reading a newspaper article about a street vigilante, and it was one of those things where Cannon and Marvel just loved each other at the time, and were hiding little Easter eggs in each of their media for the other one. So you get Paul Kersey basically showing up in Spider-Man, and Spider-Man showing up in a Chuck Norris movie.
Look at this crazy Spider-Man.
I just Googled it, and sure enough, there he is. I mean, that's awesome.
Bronson in a comic.
Yeah.
Paul Kersey is in universe. He is actually in part of Spider-Man canon.
That's awesome. Well, Austin, I guess that's pretty much all we got this time around. We won't have our next Cannon Fodder episode until sometime in November, because we got a lot of stuff going on in the month of October, so we kind of take a little bit of a little mini break. But I think right now we've got it slated for the November 14th episode. So whatever Cannon movie we land on, we'll get in touch with you and let you know, and get your latest bit of information on the Cannon Chronicles.
Oh, I'll be happy to, and I really appreciate you guys. I have fun putting those together for you.
Yeah, it's always a good time. It's nice talking. Yeah. It's nice talking to you again. All right, so next week on the show we're going to be doing Smoak's Choice. Episode 127 is going to be The Witch. Was that from 2015, right, Smoak?
Yeah, 2015. Oh, it's that 2015-2016 thing. 2015 it officially came out, or at least it played some festivals.
Yeah,
and then I think 2016 was the wide release date.
So that'll be kind of, even though that episode comes out on September 26th, that'll kind of be kicking off the month of October in a way. But then right after that, the next week, on October 3rd, episode 128 will be the second annual Spookshow Awards, where we go through the through the last year. We have, what do we have, Donnie? About 12 to 15 categories, something like that.
Yes.
Worst movie, best movie,
and,
all that stuff. And Austin,
yeah,
you'll be interested in knowing that we do have a best cannon fodder episode award to give out, I think, for that one. So I don't remember all the nominees that we've done so far. And we now, before we started doing the cannon fodder series, we actually did early this year, literally at the beginning of the year, we did New Year's Evil, and then we did 10 to Midnight. But that was before cannon fodder, so we're kind of retroactively throwing those in. Into the
a soft launch to the series.
Yeah. It just kind of, that's kind of where all this, mess got birthed was when we did New Year's Evil, and then it just kind of grew from there. But yeah, so we're kind of unofficially
fun episodes.
Yeah, we've kind of unofficially threw those in there, so that those will probably be up for consideration as well. But that'll be on, like I said, October 3rd, and that'll really be the kickoff to a lot of cool things we got planned leading up to our 4th anniversary show that will come out on Halloween Day. So, Austin, thanks again for coming. Where can everybody find you on the old internets? They want to track down your book or you?
I'm at Canon Film Guide, both on Facebook and Twitter. That's the easiest and quickest way to find me.
All right, well, there we go. And you can get your book on Amazon and where else?
Amazon, Bear Manor Media, or your local bookstore. If you've still got one of those, if you're still lucky enough to have one in your neighborhood, even a Barnes and Noble, they can order it for you.
Good.
It's always good to support brick and mortar when you can.
Yeah, support brick and mortar and support Austin. Go get his those first 2 volumes of the Canon Film Guide. Good stuff. So, all right,
thank you.
Until next time, I'm Josh for Donny, Will, who couldn't be with us, of course, and Professor Smoak. We are the All-American Spook Show podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.
Please replace the speaker on its rack when you're ready to leave. Failure to do so will damage both the speaker and your car. We'll be grateful, and so will the patrons who follow you.